Mr. Blanchard, yesterday the clerk told us that he sold his Brookfield shares within minutes because he couldn't oversee the Prime Minister's screen while still holding them. Why shouldn't the Prime Minister meet that same standard and simply divest by selling his assets instead of holding them and the potential continuing for him to benefit financially from decisions that he takes in his role as Prime Minister?
I believe that the Prime Minister, what has been set up for the Prime Minister is actually the highest level of standards of ethics. First, there's a divestment of all of his assets. And second, there is actually, he has agreed with the Ethics Commissioner that for a list of companies that are listed at the Annex A of his public declaration, that there would be the possibility, when needed, to establish an ethical wall. These are very rigorous, as I've been explaining now in front of this committee. We have a rigorous assessment tool. We have a rigorous process, and actually it is working, and it's been used in the past. And this is, I actually believe that this reflects the highest level of ethics, okay, and also that the Canadians see that as a very transparent way of doing it. Okay. Actually, I've shown you courts are in agreement with this, that this way of doing things is more transparent to Canadians than any other choices we could have made.
Do you think that it's more transparent than if the controlled assets were sold before the Prime Minister had the opportunity to make any decisions? Do you think that having them in this process that needs to be administered is more transparent than him simply divesting fully of it?
Actually, I think it's very transparent on the part of the Prime Minister
but is
to
it
have
more
accepted to be. I think it's very transparent on the part of the Prime Minister to have actually gone through the divestiture of his assets, putting it in a blind trust, and actually going into and agreeing and convening with the Ethics Commissioner to set up an ethical wall for the companies listed at Annex A, and ensuring we are working with him to ensure that the process is well respected and that he respects the highest level of ethics. And that has been actually, it's a practice that the OECD recognized as being one of the best practices in the world in this matter.
And so you used the phrase, one of the best. And my question to you is if we can improve on it. And so I think that Canada has the opportunity, and that's the study that we're undertaking at the committee right now. Can we improve on the system that we have? Are there concerns? Are there loopholes? Are there things that are giving rise to Canadians' loss of confidence or lack of confidence in our democratic institutions? And so we have an opportunity to improve on it. It doesn't necessarily serve as an indictment against Mr. Carney, but is there an opportunity? I appreciate your reference to how it's been used in the past. I appreciate your reference to the federal court ruling. That's important context and serves well to inform the evidence that this committee will have in taking recommendations forward to the House. But is this the best way? Canadians understand that if a Prime Minister, if Mr. Carney owns assets, controlled assets, even if they're in a blind trust, and if he knows what he put into the funds that he stands to benefit from through interest payments in the future, and the decisions that he and his government take improve that portfolio, well, he's going to profit from the decisions that he takes. So if he owns it, the potential for him to financially benefit continues. Wouldn't it be cleaner? Wouldn't it be simpler? Wouldn't it improve the confidence that Canadians are able to have in the process if the requirement was for prime ministers and for party leaders, including the leader of the opposition, to sell all controlled assets And then, if there were investments to be made, the discussion could be had on if a trustee could make those, but perhaps they don't hold controlled assets while they're in office. Wouldn't that just simply eliminate the risk and thereby solidify and actually improve Canadians' confidence?
I'm going to have to take that as a statement, Mr. Barrett, because we're 15 seconds over. If you want to return to it later, you're more than welcome to do that. Mr. Maloney?
My question at the end of my last intervention was with respect to improving on the Act as it exists now and improving Canadians' confidence that they're able to have, and simplifying, if I may, by having prime ministers sell all of their controlled assets before they take any decisions. And the challenge that we see in this specific instance is that there are things that the trustee cannot trade away, like the carried interest that the prime minister is entitled to based on the performance of some of the Brookfield assets that were placed in the blind trust. Even if you set aside what the ethics commissioner said, and that oftentimes there's very little churn in these trusts, and some things just will simply be managed but not traded. Do you think that I understand that you said that you like the system, you believe that the current system is effective? I appreciate that. Do you think it would be an improvement on the current system to have prime ministers sell their controlled assets before they take decisions?
Actually, I believe that at the moment, this requirement of having that they divest from their assets and put it into a blind trust is, to me, is a divestiture in itself. The Prime Minister has no knowledge of what has happened at this time. He has no knowledge of what has happened to the assets that he divested himself from and put in the blind trust.
So we have just about 30 seconds left, but there are things that are in the trust, or there are future payments that the Prime Minister is likely entitled to, this carried interest that I mentioned, for example. So that benefit still exists, and that isn't resolved by the blind trust. So again, my question is, wouldn't this be an improvement upon the system that we have?
Dans ce contexte-là, premièrement, je suis pas au courant de ce qui est dans le...
I am not aware of what's in the trust, and coming back to the premise of your question, the Prime Minister divested, put his assets in a blind trust. This is a system that is recognized throughout the world as being a good one, and then it's a good way to manage such cases and allows an elected official to meet the ethical requirements. Thank you. I was asking you about Mr. Wright, and I was saying that he was not a prime minister. My concern, as I mentioned earlier, was ensuring that we have different rules. Do you not believe that the highest level of governance requires the highest level of transparency? I believe that you're going to say yes. I would say that that's why Prime Minister Carney agreed with the Ethics Commissioner on these measures. He divested, put his assets in a blind trust, and agreed on the implementation of the ethics screen. And it includes companies on Annex A, and this is an exhaustive list because the Prime Minister understands his responsibility. Do you know who the trustee is? No, I do not. Only the Ethics Commissioner knows. No, I believe that it was chosen by the Prime Minister and the Ethics Commissioner. The lobbyist registry indicates that on from July 10th to today, 2,600 lobbyists were registered for doing lobbying with the Prime Minister's office. 150 communications between lobbyists and PMO, and 75 between lobbyists and Mr. Carney. Communications with lobbyists and communications between PMO staff and Mr. Carney. And once staff has discussed with lobbyists, is there any kind of surveillance of these communications? As I mentioned, there's a rigorous process in place for managing meetings with the Prime Minister. If a meeting is requested by a company that is on the list in Annex A, well, no meeting will be organized. Also, we ensure that there are no discussions during those meetings that would have to do with a company listed in Annex A. There are no meetings, but you decided not to use the screen or did not ban Mr. Carney from speaking with these people. Mr. Carney understands his obligations. Yes, that's the response of a chief of staff. You play your part very well. That's not the response of somebody who has to apply an ethics screen. And yes, that is my opinion. I respect your opinion, but I don't share it. Because there are processes in place. There are no meetings, no discussions. The screen is applied in that way. But your logic, well, you're saying there needs to be a blind trust. But when you say he understands his obligations, you could have said, well, no need for a blind trust. He understands and he'll never be in a conflict of interest. This logic that you're trying to share with me, that's how it is perceived. And if you're not banning meetings, well, the PM can take out his cell phone. And if you're not surveilling it, or perhaps if you're ensuring some oversight and you're telling him, well, be careful, but you're saying, no, he knows what he has to do. Is that truly responsible, a responsible way of acting? The process is very rigorous, Mr. Thériault. I'm not saying that you're rigorous or not. There are no meetings. And if there are meetings, certain topics are not raised. And in his office, it is managed and people receive training so that they can ensure that all of the obligations are met. Thank you. Time's up.